Okay, I'd like to kick us off with acknowledging our EMS colleagues. It's EMS week, and we would just like to say from the commission, a huge thank you. Certainly have EMS colleagues. Yeah, that's for EMS colleagues on the commission, but certainly many colleagues throughout the state that are doing great things. I hope I never see one at the scene, but I know that if I do, there's sort of the guardian angels there that are pick us up and get us to the trauma center. I would also like to acknowledge how difficult it is out there. I know sometimes as trauma centers, you know, we're in a nice air conditioned room, or sometimes a heated room, I guess, for the trauma room, and we have everything that we need. And we're very controlled, but it's really what I would call a war zone out there when you're in the ditch or on the interstate with cars going real fast or a hot scene where there's bullets flying. So next time you're in the trauma bay, the paramedics come in and they're sweating and they're covered in mud and you know they're out of breath. You know, just take a minute and give them a thank you. I think that goes a long way. So thanks guys for what you do. Appreciate you. As I said before, it's been a fast-paced 2 days. It was really great to see all the committees working and all the great work that's going on that was presented yesterday. I think we had a great meeting. And I think you're starting to see that come together today. You see more committee reports, which will again emphasize what we're doing. I do want to say thank you. No one's being paid for this. Everybody's doing all this committee work on their own and volunteers and in addition to their other jobs. We're all a big team here, and I certainly appreciate it. I know the commission members do. We couldn't do what we do. We wouldn't have anything to talk about if you didn't do all the hard work, and we're very appreciative. We had a great administrators committee meeting yesterday. That's, I guess, the newest group, if you will, to the trauma commission subcommittees. Valerie Wrinkle from TCAA did a great financial summation and overview of trauma finances for our trauma centers. I think it was very well received. I sat through the course. It's great for trauma directors to learn, although some of it was over my head, some terminology I hadn't heard before, but I'm learning, and it was very good. I would encourage all the trauma directors to get involved with that and work with your finance teams to assist really maximizing your revenue cycle. And then finally, Chief Whip, our meeting yesterday, we heard from highlights from different trauma centers. We also heard some case presentations on how we could improve our care. And I was very impressed by one. I made a note here from Dr. Kiefer from Effingham Health System, a level 4 trauma center. And there was one slide that he got, I think, present this thing. You know, we're trying to be very inclusive, and I was just very impressed. You know, the level 1s have always talked in the room, but now the level 3s and level 4s are presenting, they're talking, they're coming to the podium, and it's really exciting to see them really feel included and to really participate. And there was one slide that really just blew me away. It's probably what I considered, for me, the best slide of the entire day. And he had a slide. He was talking about a timeline. And he was talking about we're purchasing a rapid infuser, our MTP protocol working, but we changed from one blood agency to another, and we don't have platelets right now, so we're going back to another, we're working it out, and we'll get our platelets. And I thought, this is coming from a level 4 trauma center that we're talking about rapid infusers, one-to-one resuscitation, and platelets. And I made a comment, you know, that our trauma system is really maturing. So that was just wonderful to see. And that's really what we want to do. We want everyone to move forward. And I was just really impressed with this presentation. An update on the 61 million. As you know, we presented here last year about putting the timeline together and putting the data together to go for the 61 million. It was incredibly well received at the Capitol. And what I mean by that is we really worked many of the key players in the Senate as well as the House as far as educating them on why we need $61 billion. We had excellent data, as you know, from our readiness costs. We were asking for 50% of our readiness costs from the state. And when we walked out of one of the legislators' office, he said, you know, you have a lot more than what most people come here asking for funding. You have real data. And that made me feel good that, you know, we're on the right track. We really didn't receive any pushback as far as, you know, there's something wrong with the data or we don't believe the data. I think with the way we laid it out, it's, you know, we've been working on this for a decade now, collecting our data. And again, it was just well received. But as we knew, it's a heavy lift to go to ask for $60 million in one legislative session. We didn't get that. We got $4 million, but we got recognition. We developed credibility. And we talked to some key legislators, both in the House and both in the Senate. So it's like anything, the story continues and we'll continue to work on that. And then lastly, I'd like to thank all the volunteers, all the committee chairs. We'll be talking more about that today and also hear reports. But again, thank you for what you do. And then Liz, do we have a slide? Yeah, we can do that. We've gotten so big that Liz and I were talking about this. Do folks actually realize sort of how everything ties together? So you probably can't read we can get you a copy of this if you want to, but I'll try to sort of walk you through it. But this is who we are. We've grown from one little group or committee, really 9 commission members, but really no infrastructure to now we have all these committees. And if you see there, we have the Georgia Trauma Commission, and then as you walk through there, we have the Georgia Trauma Foundation on one side and the RTACs on the other side. And then under that, we have all the committees that you hear from. I won't read each one of them. I'm sorry that you can see them all, but there's, you know, the Georgia Trauma Committee for Excellence. There's the EMS Committee. There's a Rehab Committee, Administrators Committee, and then under that you have other work groups and so on. And then bottom right-hand corner on the slide, this involves over 300 stakeholders that really make up who we are. So again, I know you can't read it, but if you want to get an idea of sort of where you fit in or where your committee fits in, you can have this list and do that. Just contact her. But again, this is who we are. And we couldn't do all this work if we weren't all working together. So I think the last thing I have to do is approval of the February minutes. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes before I turn it back over to this? Dr. Bleacher as a first, and get a second. Who is that? Jay, Dr. Smith. Okay. Any discussion, corrections, concerns? Okay, I'll just take any nays for the minutes? All right, Gabby, hearing none, that carries. So I'll turn it over to Liz.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. Good morning, everyone. There is one other item that was on your list that actually came up from last meeting that we need to do. It's part of our secretary role. Is appointment of the bylaws committee, because our bylaws, remember we extended our officers terms to go to when the bylaws revision was next due, which is in November. So we need to get a little head start on that because if we wait till August, we won't have time to pull the group together. So I guess we just need a couple of volunteers. I think last time we identified some. Mr. Keenan's in your table there.
Was that a volunteer meeting?
Yes, sir. It's kind of a voluntold, I think.
I think one more. Any volunteers to help you down to look at the bylaws?
No, I'm just looking at you because
Well, remember, you have one member who's not here, so in true spirit of.
has the administrative prowess to help with balance.
If you need help,
Okay, so we'll have Pete and Rob on that. And when is that due? When do you know that?
November, so that gets us to cycles to get the group together, and it might be good to keep everyone who you are interested, because that way, if we have trouble getting the group together with schedules, whatever. And that's just important to see. My report, you'll see it in your packet on the pages 15, 16, and 17, and I am going to turn it over to Crystal Shellman. She has a few updates relative to RCAP, but I'll just hit a few high notes here. There also in my portion of the packet is a 2024 legislative session recap with several bills that either impacted us slightly, or of course, the big one was the budget. Dr. Ashley has already mentioned that. We did get an additional $4 million allocation, but we have a nice new software now where we can do, we can actually put notes in as the bills are going through, and future state, I'd like to use that to keep you guys educated. You never know what's really going to come down the pipe that may impact us. So we do keep an eye out for that, and that software allows us to track anything that could potentially impact Trump. And then really interesting what just happened a couple months ago, the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma spring meeting, which was early in March in Chicago. Dr. Ashley participated as a discussant in a small spotlight session that focused on trauma center and system development and financing. That was really an interesting session. I was there, so I went with him to that. And I think what's nice is it really does highlight how mature we are as a system in addressing some of those issues. And then when Valerie Ringel did her presentation to the administrators group on Monday, she mentioned that in all of her work with TCAA, which they consult with a lot of state systems across the country and a lot of other trauma centers, we're the only group or the only state that has an organized forum for our trauma administrators to look at things like finance. And I'll say it again, I know I said it before, but when you're not close to it, it's hard to kind of keep track of this stuff. But in the code we created the Trauma Commission, the Trauma Commission is to be the payer of last resort. So it bodes very well for you all. Dr. Ashley and I can present to the legislators that we are educating you on how to maximize your reimbursement opportunities, because then truly the money you're getting is that sort of last resort, and we're not using that to say, oh, we can't work it out on the trauma billing side. So we can say that, and then I think what came out of that is we will move forward with some financial metrics so we can try to, that'll really help us put data behind that story. And then some good news is that we got acceptance from the AAST, the American Association for the Surgery of Trauma, on an acceptance of our oral abstract submission. That is the impact of the ACS trauma verification on a statewide quality collaborative. And did you want to mention your other abstract?
The data that was presented, I think last year, where we talked about Dr. Robinson, who used to be, he's our lead neurosurgeon, but he also was a founding member of the commission and has since obviously rotated off. He has an interest, and he presented to this group last year, I think we were in Savannah, about the 1,803 lives that were saved because we went from 16% worse than the national average as a state in 2003. Now we're 6% better than the national average in 2020 or 21, I think it was 20. And so he looked at the financial implications, and that was what was presented, if you remember, that the years of productive life that were saved and what was the personal income. And it turned out to be, he also looked at the tax revenue that would be brought into the state. And that was between $500 and $600 million. So, you heard that data, and I remember that, sort of fast paced. And we submitted that to the AAST, and that was accepted for presentation and hopefully publication in the Journal of Trauma as well. And so we also presented that to the legislators. So basically, that's a lot of gobbledygook, but if you want to remember something, elevator talk, every dollar that's spent on the Commission for Trauma, there's a $22.60 return on tax revenue to the state lifetime. So, if you want to find that out, but you save a trauma patient, they live X number of years, pay taxes. That's what we're talking about, return on investment. So that was accepted as well. So we had 2 papers from Georgia at the AAST that was accepted for presentation.
And this year, AAST is in Vegas in September 11th to 15th, I think it is, or 11th to 14th. And the World Trauma Congress is being held in conjunction with AAST this year. There is going to be a nursing track at that. So really exciting. That would be a great thing to go to since World Trauma is being held in conjunction. So, and then continuing on the finance theme, Trauma Center Association of America just had their annual meeting a couple weeks ago, and I'm privileged to chair that systems committee for TCAA. And our committee put together a system finance survey to send out to all states to find out, are you funded? What is your funding mechanism? What is your distribution methodology? And it was a slow response rate at the beginning, but I think we're over 20 responses just from the NASEMSO group, which is the National Association of EMS Officials. Now TCAA is going to push it to their membership so we can up the response rate. I think this will be great information to kind of highlight the gaps across other systems again in the country, and maybe even take that information and develop some best practices or maybe even a toolkit for how we kind of get started. And then I just wanted to highlight our social media launch. So please, if you're not, there's some QR codes. And so thank you for that. So please follow us on the socials, and we'll be pushing out information on there as well as love to highlight some of the things that you're doing, and we hope to expand that presence in the future. And then Crystal, I'm going to turn it over to you for some marketing updates.
Good morning, everyone. So the first thing that I'd like to do is highlight a new RTAC coordinator that we have, Kristen Spires. Kristen has taken my position as the Region 10 RTAC coordinator. She's worked in healthcare for about 20 years, mostly in pre-hospital medicine as a paramedic. So she's going to be a great asset to the team, and we're very happy to have her. We've also got 2 other coordinators that are here, so thank you all for joining us. If you're not familiar with your RTAC coordinators, if that's not something that you're involved in, please reach out to them. We've got some really exciting work that's going on right now with the regions and with their efforts. So really appreciative for all of that that's happening. Next, I've got some updates. We've updated these maps to give you a snapshot of where we look with the Stop the Bleed program right now. And this is a map of the school projects. That was the initial priority, was the public schools K through 12. We only have 2 counties remaining that have not completed all of their training and received all of their kids. Danielle Johnson, our tech coordinator for Region 3, has made really great efforts with these 2 counties. We do have training that's ongoing with them, and we anticipate the completion of these within the next year. And that's been a major undertaking.
Is it all the way up?
Next is the school bus project. Of course, that was the second priority. Again, there's 2 cities in Atlanta.
It looks a little lower than what it was yesterday.
Region 8, with the need to got some updated data for some of these schools in South Georgia. We have a little bit more completion of that project. And then finally, this is the expanded project. I believe it was a little over a year ago, the coordinators came to the commission and asked if we could expand the project to include law enforcement, fire departments, and then other government agencies. We have received several applications. These are the counties that have been impacted by that expanded project. Some of the counties have multiple agencies, their EMAs, their law enforcement. We've got rec departments, public health, things like that have been included in that. So the last application period was in April, and we're in the process of distributing those kits now. The application will open again in July, and we're going to have another big push for those.
Doesn't look like it changed that much.
Next is the,
Let me see.
assessment. Each of the board members has to do an
Okay.
assessment this year. And we believe that's going to be an ongoing.
I can't do a whole lot when there's something new.
Commissioners have invest in EMS education. So we wanted to have a snapshot of what that looks like in each of the regions. We had really great participation across the state and found a lot of programs that are working really well and some ideas on how we can improve our offerings. That's something that the coordinators will be working with the OEMS and T educators.
Let's push as much as you can push it.
Make sure that we've got it identified, but that's something that we're progressing. So that was a very useful tool that we'll expand on in the future. Next, we've got a
Can't do a whole lot of
meeting
adjusting
that
on
we've been
this.
trying to put together for a while. We're going
Doesn't even
to
show up up
on
there.
June 18th, we're going to have a meeting for all of the RTAC coordinators and the chairs. The idea of this is that we'll get everyone together. We're going to share some of our goals and some of the resources and the activities that are happening in each of the regions. We'll look at collaborative efforts to get everybody together and hopefully continue to expand the presence of the RTACs.
And before we introduce our next presenter, that will conclude my report. I will make one remark that many of you may not know. Last night and the night before, we had the inaugural first annual G-Quib Cornhole Championship. I think something was wrong with those bags.
You guys were really, really champions, but you're going down next year.
And we have a new trophy that's being built. We're honored, so we look forward to it next year. But that concludes my report, and I will, excited to introduce our next presenter, who is coming from the Georgia Rural Health Innovation Center. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that, but Chris Scoggins is
It almost looks like it has a
director of
limit
special
on it.
projects for the Georgia Rural
But I
Health
mean, it won't
Innovation
be on
Center. They've been a
everything. It
great
seems like
partner with us, along with the state office of rural
Can't do a
health.
whole lot.
And
with it
taking a
until-
look at some
once
of
we go
those
to break.
recommendations from the ACS system consultative visit and turning them into action items. One of those items was a rural hospital needs assessment. And so we were so excited to partner with you guys to help us, because you guys have this survey know-how. So Chris, thanks so much for coming up to present your findings from the survey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity on this. We are an entity funded by the state of Georgia that has our University School of Medicine tasked with just doing whatever we can to assist people here in the state. For about the past 2 years, I've done this one. So was excited for the Trauma Commission State Office of Rural Health on this particular project. As director of special projects, as you can imagine, the things that don't fit nicely in the write-ups job description from on my desk, and I get to do one next like this. So thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to discussing these findings in a little more detail with the level 3 and 4. So I'm going to be parsing the data a little bit more. Today, I'm just going to give you a top line set of findings from our questions and a little bit of insight into what's going on. So a little bit of background is, I did introduce this, but the competition reached us about helping with this. We also leveraged some assistance from the State Office of Rural Health in reaching out to our rural hospitals across the state. As you can see, we conducted this with our 66 rural hospitals that have emergency departments across the state. March 11th through the April 5th of this year, so relatively recent data. And I wanted to part of the fact that we have 94% of the loss rate in these hospitals. If you've ever done any collection, you know that's insane. So we got a lot of money for hospital. We have 62 of the 66 hospitals represented in this. Next one. So I'm just going to get into the specific questions that we asked and kind of place some top line findings. As far as designation is concerned, I'm sure it's no surprise that 82% of this hospital might be an adult trauma center of any kind. None of those 62 hospitals represented were level 1s or 2s, and we had several 3s and a couple of 4s. So I'm sure that will not come to the next month. Generally looking at the size of these facilities, as you can imagine, there's critical access for 46% of them critical access hospitals, 25 beds or fewer. We had a few that I consider larger rural hospitals with 100 beds, but as you can see, mostly smaller facilities. Total beds in the emergency department follows the same trend. Most of those facilities had fewer than 10 beds, with a few of them a little bit larger than the 15 beds. Looking at staffing, I think this is really important to note that the majority of those hospitals almost had 5 or fewer nurses on every shift. So I think that's really important when thinking about what costs for these facilities. So we keep that in mind. There's a little bit this is looking at coverage of specific ancillary services. So looking at lab, X-ray, CT, MRI, ultrasound, whether they had full 24-hour physical coverage, on-call coverage, or partial on-call coverage, or partial in-person coverage. As you can see, we're doing pretty good with lab, X-ray, CT. MRI is pretty hit or miss across the state. Most have on-call text for that. 14 hospitals reporting no coverage whatsoever. They don't have machines. I think so. And going to ultrasound, I think, was also an important finding that most of them only had that. Similar here, this is looking at NPs, PAs, and physicians and what kind of coverage they have. 53 of those hospitals have potential in-person live physician coverage. We see more nurse practitioners covering these facilities in days. Many of the facilities didn't have any theater coverage. Yeah. You can't see the exact.
Could our IT team in the back fix the slides or whoever's?
So
Is that again? Oh, okay. Yeah, you go to a slideshow. Or either minimize. I can't see the bottom of it. There you go. Now I can see it. Perfect. Thank you.
So looking into specialty coverage in these facilities, very little 24/7 coverage of general surgery. No hospital for 24/7 coverage for orthopedics. Radiology. Radiology was pretty reasonably well covered compared to others. But these red bars at the top, you can see a significant number of these hospitals were covered or reported absolutely no coverage. We looked a little bit at written protocols and practice guidelines. So looking specifically at antibiotic use for open fractures, only 31% of those hospitals had written policy on that. 53% did not. And we made a point of including this. We did survey and asked for ER directors and trauma coordinators, people who should be out, and we did have 16% weren't really sure that policy, and I think that's an opportunity for education. Next slide. Similarly here, use of acid, transfusion, we have a protocol on that, 53%, bigger proportion did have a policy on that, 39% reporting that they did. Resource availability overall looked pretty good. Blood fluid warmers, 44 and 62 reported that. So we're doing pretty good on that. If anything, you know, that commercially produced, I mean, I think that a lot of hospitals from that I've talked to kind of we can do about as far as alternatives. But blood warmers and blood fluid warmers and alternatives. Looking at the National PEDS Readiness Project, I thought this was interesting. We have 17% that did report that they were compliant with that or aware of it. 31% were reporting that they were in progress working toward that goal. 15% no, and about 37%, a significant portion who were unsure who was took that to be leader of that program. So that's another opportunity for education. Next one. Written trauma activation criteria, 56% did have a written policy on that, 41% have a policy on that. Looking at the trauma patients received into the facility, asking how often were those patients admitted to the facility, and as you can imagine, no one reported all of those. Most people were transferring, and 48%, almost half of them reported that they never keep trauma. How far do you typically have to transfer patients? This is something I know we spent a lot of time concerned about the state of Georgia. 74%, almost 2/3 reported that is between 30 and 75 miles. So we did have nobody reported greater than 150 miles, but about 20% that reported that 76 to 150, which is pretty significant. Most used modality of transport, ground ALS ambulance, and air are the only two things reported, air helicopter, I should say. Only two things reported about evenly split in the state. Nobody's reporting that the most used resource was ambulance, ground ambulance. It's interesting. Amount of time we've been calling for transport and actually getting the patient out of the facility, 55% reported that was between 30 and 60 minutes. We did have a portion here that reported an hour, 2 hours, and then 12% reported greater than 2 hours. Looking at what EMS service they most frequently, most were interact. 47% here were agency. 12% has hospital. Others. Common barriers, we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I appreciate this informing their domain expertise on this. 51% reported that trauma center capacity was a barrier to them that they encountered. Reluctance to accept the patient was relatively low, only 7% reported technical issue. Conversion process was 50%. 84% reported that lack of ground EMS transportation was very important. Lack of air transportation, 35%. And having talked to people, that's mostly weather related, just wanting to get the sun's. Capability of transport service, ELS, provide 40% for that issue. And patient preference, Yeah, is the first paragraph there, transition. The first paragraph there, that's 51% trauma center support. These patients, added new patients, patients, or these new patients, and they would be they did not specify that in the act. Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question on your transportation, the 84%. How exactly did that measure, and was there a threshold of what would be the time, time, maybe, like 60 minutes, 90% of the time, fractiles?
We asked.
Oh, they wouldn't use a lot. It's like he's got it pushed off to the side.
Breakdown. Asking about availability of blood products. Out of those hospitals, 58 of the facilities reported that they have indicative blood products. 100% of those facilities have high red blood cells. 64% have plasma. Breaking that down a little bit further, looking at the total supply on hand. With packed red blood cells, about half of that group had 1.5 units. 32% of them were greater than 10 units. As you can see, as we move across, you get a little bit less availability. So fewer units of plasma on there. Looking at involvement with performance improvement, only 31% said that they were involved, that they were not, and then 10% said whether they were involved or not. Looking at participation in the RTDC, and then 22% said yes, 62% said no, and 16% were unsure. We're really interested in this question about statewide system, looking at their confidence in their ability to go for a trauma designation or increase their trauma designation. 35% did say that they felt like they could. 48% were Latinx, and 17%. Looking at that group that did something, thought they were capable of going for a higher level, asking about any barriers that they perceived. Financial obligations was the biggest one, 60% said that was one of the barriers. Administrative support, 15%. Where we find the FTE, that kind of thing. General surgery involvement also was about percent. Other physician support, 30%, and then 25% said they had other barriers. We asked them about those, and then most of the really centered around training and administrative support as well. And asking them about additional training for their facilities. As you can see, they pretty much were interested in whatever training was very interested in some things. Current standards for the care of critically wounded trauma patients came up to 9%, and complex polytrauma. So those were the most endorsed training. Like I said, that was just kind of a quick outline of our questions. We look forward to digging down in our parts of the data. looking at differences regionally between local communities, borders, looking at differences. That's basically what we found in the top line.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much for your work. This is data that never happened before, so that's wonderful. I guess my question is, I'm a little bit surprised by some of the data that I'm seeing and the capabilities of some of these quote rural hospitals. Some of them have better capabilities than mine on the one center for blood hospital. So I'm curious as to what your definition of a rural hospital is. The baseline community, or what's the definition of a rural hospital?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we look at the 100 counties that we have state less than 50,000 people, as well as 2 counties.
We've had these were hospitals that were not trauma centers.
Historically, we're not.
That's all.
I thought that some, and as I mentioned, some of the opportunities for education on
Oh, I didn't take it back.
I'd like to follow up, see Dr. Patterson over there, the chair of our rural committee in level 3 and level 4. Greg, any comments or next steps? Sort of a follow-up to Jay's question about, did anything fall out? Any comments?
Hey, a couple of things. I agree.
Can you mind, just so the folks online can hear, because they,
Is this mic on?
Should.
That one?
Turn it off.
Couple of things, I think, that I would question, and I agree with you, Jim, about, the blood product question. I think one of the things that they're taking in there, is the average person that maybe answering the service doesn't understand the concept of platelets and the packs that are available. They're considering a super pack of platelets, 8 pack of platelets. You can't separate those. They may have 1 pack of platelets that are on board, and that's why they're including them, that we have so many. Because according to that survey, I don't have as much as that either.
Yeah, neither do I.
I mean, I know I have a lot more red blood cells in 10 units, but the platelets are the big issue there, and that's one of the things I think that Dr. Ashley commented yesterday that I was very impressed with as well, was Effingham, and they're talking about their blood usage, projects going forward. I think the good thing is equipment, and whether that equipment is up to date, and whether anybody really knows how to use it, and have used it in the last 2 years is an issue. I disagree with the 25% involvement in, the rural trauma development course. I just don't think that's right. I think they may have had one in the last 10 years, but what is that serving them now? And keeping that up to date, I do think there's an area for either something like, RTTVC, or really in all honesty, continuing forward with the project of March Falls. And continuing what we've done in the trauma medical directors, committee meeting the other day, and looking at a transfer criteria. I just would have to drill down into some of those things, look at it a little bit. This is the first I've seen of it. I want to get my hands on it. I've already put myself in there. I've got to talk with you. I need to set up a meeting with you and see where we go next at this point. Because my passion is rural healthcare, but specifically trauma, but rural healthcare and its own whole level, there's a big, huge lack or need for certain things. And not necessarily individual needs, it's communication between these hospitals. And I think their idea of what they're waiting for transfer, I disagree with the times, because I think they're just recalling. I really like to see them having statistics to show that you're doing that less than 120 minutes, when I can't get a patient out to a higher level of care in less than 240 minutes. I think they're answering these with bias, and I think we have to look at that bias to make sure that this is an accurate, survey. I think it is to certain parts of it, but I think they're answering it with a little bias, so we need to clarify that.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think Dr. Pedersen hit on a key point. From a trauma center standpoint, when I get calls from online facilities, we have a very rural region that we cover in Savannah, southeast. And we've got 28 counties, 20 of which are 5-bed emergency rooms. And they tell me they don't have any blood products at all. And so that may be an education issue with the physician I'm talking to, or the PA or the nurse practitioner. Because I'm sure you sent the survey out to the hospital, and the most likely person who's gonna fill that out is the charge nurse of the emergency room, not the actual physician. So I think there may be an opportunity here for education of the providers, and nurse practitioners, PAs, or whatever, about the resources of their facility. And like Dr. Patterson said, is your equipment up to date? Do you even know how to use your equipment? I think those are all the key questions. Any great survey creates more questions than they do answers, and this is what your survey just did. So this is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I will say that the vast majority of people who filled this out were ER department managers and directors. And I think also, to the previous point, any survey like this that is not asking them for quantitative data is capturing a certain amount of their perspective as far as, like you said, their biased perspective. This is what they think is going on. And I think there's value in understanding what each of the hospitals thinks is going on, and then starting from there, drilling down on, well, let's back that up with numbers on what is actually happening.
Could we, Dr. Patterson, just going on the comments there, I think, this is a good place for us to, I think your committee needs to really sort of, this is hot off the press, so to speak. I think I'd like to kick this over to your committee and let you work with Chris and, dive down into this and get some ideas and show your committee and see, because this is who your committee is, and see, what they think, and maybe come back with some recommendations. But I was encouraged to see that they want education, and you just happen to have some education in your back pocket called Mark Balls. I mean, it's amazing. You just happen to have something that people are asking for. So I see a marriage there that we can work on and should be about ready to go, quickly turn that around and get some education. So let's get that back to committee and then come back with maybe next meeting with some recommendations. That's fair.
And also, this is a wake-up call for level ones, especially my level one, about educating the rural facilities, especially on protocols. We have all those protocols, and we can simply give them to them. And now they have a protocol on fracture and open fracture antibiotics. So I think that's just a wake-up call to me, that I need to get out and talk to people a little more, be more communicating with my rural facilities. So thank you.
That's an easy fix, because we get so, and as I'm sure you do, we get so many open fractures from rural Georgia, that I had no idea that they didn't have the protocol. It doesn't mean they're not giving the antibiotic quick, they just don't have the protocol. But if they have a protocol, then everybody's thinking about it, even if they have a locums physician coming in or something for a weekend. It just happens, which affects our outcomes. If we get the patient, they already have the antibiotic started at the local hospital, we're gonna have better outcomes. Good work, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we move into the Finance and Budget Committee report, Dr. Maderos.
Budget Finance Committee says we make a 5-minute break.
All right, let's 5-minute bio break and techno break.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I think we have our technical difficulties corrected. So we'll move into the budget report. Dr. Maderos.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. Good morning, fellow commissioners and guests this morning. The Budget and Finance Committee has been working very hard to bring for you our proposed FY25 budget and the proposed reallocation plan for unspent funds for FY24. But if you look at your packet, which is your supplement, because as always, we have too much data and never get it in on time for Gabby to put in your big packets, you can look at the super speeder progress year to date. And I'm happy to report that we remain ahead. We are 13% ahead on our super speeder. And I understand from the news that we are back to pre-pandemic travel plans for Memorial Day weekend. So while I want everybody to say, be safe, I do hope some people speed so that we can continue to increase our revenue to use for these worthwhile projects like our rural hospital education, which we know we need. So you guys can take a look at that. It's the same information that you receive each month or each quarter in our finance report, but we are ahead, which is great news. So the first thing we'd like to discuss and bring forth on behalf of the Budget Committee for consideration by the full commission is the FY24 final reallocation plan. It follows your super speeder table. And it can be somewhat of a complicated table to look at. And every time I think I understand it, sometimes I look at it again and I still get confused. But as you know, we keep a very tight budget and we have some dollars in reserve. Katie's very good and we provide for you each time expense to budget reporting. And so we're on top of funds that can be redirected and reallocated for other initiatives. Midway through the year, we were able to identify several initiatives for funding that we had funds left over for. The budget subcommittee did approve those. And then we added additional funds at the end of the fiscal year, which we just discussed at our last Budget and Finance Committee, as well as their fireworks revenue true-up dollars, the fireworks revenue dollars, and then any other unspent dollars. So at the bottom table, you can see the total amount of funds was $2.9 million to reallocate. I'm not going to go over in great detail. You're welcome to take a few minutes and look at it. The prior approved reallocation funding is the top half. And then we had some remaining funds where you see we proposed additional reallocations. And then the remaining funds at the end of all of that gets the 80-20 split between pre-hospital and trauma centers. And we will be distributed based on the traditional and standardized formula that we have used in the past. So I am going to bring this forth as a motion from the Budget and Finance Committee and open the floor up to the fellow commission members who have not seen this. Give you a minute to take a look at it and let me know if you have any questions, comments on what we are bringing forth.
So it doesn't need a second coming from committee, so it's open for discussion.
Just a quick question. I guess I don't understand the graph on the revenue to budget comparison for the super speeder funds. The super speeder revenue and the allocation to Georgia Trauma Commission, I thought that would be that number would be the same.
Because we get more funding, is that what I'm sorry, just want to make sure that we get more.
It's the funding from the previous year too.
Yeah, and it is the funding from the previous year, so you have to remember that the revenues are measured and whatever is collected gets put into the budget for the following year, so it's a year behind. It's a year behind, if that makes sense.
Okay. So when you look at the table that shows us 13% ahead, that's not for ours for this year. That will be for a future year funding. So we potentially will get additional funds in the future year based on the revenues collected currently. Yeah. So what we're spending in 24 was the super speeder from last year. Clear as mud, isn't it? All right. Any questions on the reallocation? We want to make sure that everybody's comfortable and understands our plan for funding. And if there are no questions, then Mr. Chairman, call for vote.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll call to vote. All right, I'll just take nays. Any nays to the budget? Okay, budget carries.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On the next page of your packet is the detailed expense to budget report that you also see every quarter from the Budget Committee. We tried to show you all of the line item details by department that we spend. That's for your information. The last thing that the Budget and Finance Committee is proud to present to the full commission is the proposed FY25 budget. One thing that I am excited to say is thanks to Dr. Ashley and Liz and the time that they spent on the Capitol, making the case for the needs and for some of our additional super speeder revenue, we are now able to increase our readiness funding for level 4 centers at 50% of their total readiness cost. So we've come a long way for that. I know they used to get a small stipend, and it's an exciting time to be able to increase that. But if you'll look at the snapshot of the budget is there. We have detailed information for anyone who's interested in looking at the details behind it. It's before you, and because it was from a committee, we are just bringing it forth as a motion and open for discussion. Mhm.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, call to vote.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Could I get
ahead, John.
could I get an explanation for the decrease in funding for the foundation? What the line items on that were?
Yeah, you can. Sorry, I was just looking at what they were talking about. Yeah, so the foundation we had looked back at the 10-year historical allocation and distribution to the foundation. The foundation had asked for their first increase last fiscal year, which the full budget committee and the full commission approved. There were some specific deliverables within that requirement for reporting, which had 90% been met. And they requested again an additional increase in funds. Currently, the budget subcommittee did not feel, based on the funding priorities that we had, that we were in a position to approve their requested increase in funds. And then discussion went back and forth around, do we allocate their budget amount prior to the previous fiscal year, or do we return them to last year's amount that we gave them? There was, again, lots of discussion back and forth, and there was some follow-up discussions between both the foundation leadership as well as the commission leadership on aligned mission and vision. I will say that the Budget and Finance Committee, as well as the full commission, is 100% committed to supporting the foundation's operating cost. However, I will say that the committee felt they do not have a very clear understanding or picture of what the true operating costs are. So they compromised on a mid-range between the 182 and the 270, which you see before you, which is the 220. There are opportunities, as you know, to request additional funds for initiatives that may come up throughout the year that the foundation finds themselves unable to cover as a result of their reduced operating budget. And the Budget Finance Committee, as well as the full commission, is more than happy to entertain those proposals on their behalf and support any initiatives that will further the mission and vision of the Georgia Trauma Commission and the growth of the Georgia trauma system. So, any other questions on that?
Yeah, I think I have a few comments about that. First, when you say the budget committee didn't have detailed line items for our operating expenses, I find that I'm caught off guard by that, because I feel like we did provide the detailed line items for our operational expenses. And also the zero balance budget means that we don't look 10-year historical perspective. We look at what we need right now. And so the fact that our operational expenses are going to be spent and now they're being cut by 20%, although we made 90% of our deliverables, as you said, then it didn't add up to me. But if this is what we have to work with, then I guess we'll work with it.
Any other comments? So
It's just in the future, Regina, this is just a technical point, and maybe it's just me. In the future, for the committee, I'm on the budget subcommittee, so I know some of these numbers, but I can't read these because they're font way too small.
Small.
Is there a way that we can blow that up for the future for people to see things?
We can, yeah. We used to have like the legal size spreadsheets. And then, and all of the documents and so forth for all of the budget and finance committees are available on the commission website.
Okay,
And you can see the detailed reports that are contained there as well.
right.
One thing that we strive to do is real good fiscal transparency so that everybody involved in the state trauma system can see where your dollars are being spent.
Right.
And so all what you see on this page, there's multiple pages, is in full detail attached to those two. But yes, we can go back to a larger sheet. We just,
Or just
yeah,
multiple
we had a
sheets
big
if we
fold
cut
out
the-
sheet. Yeah,
so-
we
so
could do
can blow
one
the font
section
up.
per
Yeah,
page.
just-
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
You can't see that, Jim? I can see it. And I'm
I
like
can
not
see
far,
red, yellow, and
I'm not
green.
I'm
is all
far
I-
behind you.
This is actually the overview of FY '20. All of it is on there. I mean, some of this is just really hard to, to print out, so it's much easier to look at.
Yeah, it's just that, I mean, I guess I'm the wrong person to bring this up, but I mean, I know these numbers, but I'm just worried about the other commission members who may be seeing this for the first time
Mhm.
and they have to vote on something that they can't even read. So
Mhm.
that's
No,
my
yeah,
only-
they got it before, because I sent, everybody. Everybody got their summary email with the important items to vote on, so just make sure I usually highlight all of the items for voting, and it is important to look at all of those items for voting in detail, and I provide you the page numbers and the packets to go to, and we take a lot of care to make sure that the packets are uploaded timely, so please review those in advance.
And I'll also make a comment and follow up. You see, it's a fairly large budget that we deal with, that we distribute. It's very difficult sometimes to determine distribution of funds. There is a very tight accountability mechanism. All recipients of funds from the Trauma Commission receive a contract that have specific deliverables that need to be met in order for funds to be dispersed. And that's for everybody. No, I think there's only one group that we provide grant funds to. And even though we don't have the high expectations under contract for deliverables, they provide a very detailed report of all of their activities, despite that. So they go above and beyond for that. But fiscal accountability is very important to this committee, and adherence to those requirements are very important. And, OEMS and T and GEMSA could probably tell you they provide pages and pages of detailed invoice to support their expenditures for their courses, right down to if they had to buy a Band-Aid to a member. So there's a lot that goes into this.
Regina, do you have an estimate of what the fireworks revenue would be every year? Because is that included in the budget?
It is.
It is, so that's not an add-on that we can ask for additional funds afterwards, correct?
No, you'll see that actually if you see the fireworks true up and the fireworks funding, which is on the redistribution page, what do we get? About 2 million, I would say. On average, we get about $2 million a year in fireworks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Then we'll go ahead and vote on the budget. Any nays? I'll just take nays.
Nay.
I have one nay. It was Dr. Bleacher, I believe. Any others? Okay. Vote carries.
That concludes our report. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into the EMS committee report. Is that going to be Courtney or is it?
He's not here with us today, so we're gonna skip it. I think he did submit a report and it's in the packet, but we allotted a time for Chris to do his slide.
Okay, so we're gonna that's just a paper report?
Correct.
Okay. All right, then we'll move into the level 3 and 4 Rural Trauma Center Committee. Dr. Patterson.
Thanks, sir. You have our notes in your packet. First thing I did want to comment was we've talked about a good bit already today is March pause. Did hit kind of a road bump or a speed break, if you will, in getting production done for our lectures that we hope to have online. So we're actually switching gears and changing to use in-house AV consultants to do the production for us. And hopefully that will not put us too far behind and we can get something done. My goal is actually to try to present something around the November meeting to have y'all see either a snippet or I don't think we have the whole time for the commission to see 4 hours worth of work, but I think you can see at least some of the thoughts that we had and see some of the production quality hopefully we have available at that time. ACS trauma system consultation and rural focus site visit. Just got through hearing the results from Dr. Scoggins on the survey for rural resource needs assessment, and that's been completed. He and I have already swapped contact information and are setting up a meeting to continue the discussion on that and pull that into committee so we can hopefully bring back some recommendations in November. Our ongoing projects for access to specialty care across the state will be redone in August. We do it every year now. This will be the third iteration of this, and hopefully we'll have that out to everyone in September and ultimately in November. We still hope to develop an app for that, if you will, to have that available, and similar to what we even talked about after the TMD meeting the other day was an app for transfers in the rural setting so they can look up something on Georgia Trauma or however they want to look it up. That they have access to all the different care that everybody else has in the state, but also who would be their closest person based on GPS. Those may be a few pipe dreams, but at least we can try to do something in that direction. PI specific issues that we've been working on. Rachel Han in our group has reported summary of the Trauma Connections work group, which we have. That's what we named our kind of mentor group that we developed between level 3s and level 4s. We're looking at 3 different issues there: transfer times, EMS education and feedback, and then injury prevention, which we all need some help in across the board. Our ACS consultation and verification process for the level 3s. We've had continued existing discussion on this issue because of time delays. If you'll remember, I came to you last meeting and really didn't expect to get put on the spot, but I did. I gave you a date that I hoped that we could get everything done by. I really probably did not see that through when you were asking me that question because I didn't expect to give you something right then about a date. And of course we had to get a motion through. I fall on the sword and come back to you and actually looking at this at this point. We really would like the commission to understand the persistent delays from the ACS consultative visit. They're out 16 months now to schedule a visit at this point. This has to do with pandemic delays. The delay that they shut down for the gray book to come out has really put people in a bind at this point. So what we would hope to do would allow us to extend the ACS verification. Currently, the deadline is June 30th of 2026. We'd like to extend that for existing level 3s in the state to June 30th of 2027. And then for the 2 new level 3s that have come on board since November of 2022 to extend to them a date of June 30th, 2028. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Patterson. So, any questions, comments?
I guess just on the extensions, do we have a timeline of when people are currently booked for their visits and what the gaps are, so we can have an idea what that looks like, Greg, or?
I know we've had our consultative visit, back in, I want to say October, I think it was. We've actually gone to a new EMR some 3 weeks ago, which we knew we were going to, and we completely had to shut down because of that. So we can't even, we're now starting to schedule after we've gotten through this first month of the EMR. So we're 14, 15 months away now already to be able to schedule a verification visit, which would be, in, late 2020 or middle of 2025 to the late 2025 ourselves. That's the one I can give you right now. I think the last level 3 consultative visit was 2 months ago, I believe.
No, we have one.
Have one still
It was
left?
supposed to be, but it got pushed to the fall, and so that's what kind of drove this revised timeline. Because we looked at when is the last of the currently designated due, and what would a timeline, and using the guidance that the ACS gave us with the lead time.
Well, I'll just give my thoughts on it. When we started this process over maybe 7 or 8 years ago, when we started talking about level 1s being verified by ACS and 2s, and we gave everybody, I think, years to get that done, to get a consultative visit and the whole idea was we want everybody to succeed. We didn't just say in 2 years, everybody has to do this to get funding. So the goal was to get everybody to the finish line, not to leave anybody at the starting line. And so we've taken the same approach with our 3s and 4s. We want everybody to be successful. So I think this is just my thoughts. Everybody gets a vote, but I think if the chair of the rural committee, 3 and 4, is coming and saying they've looked at it and we have this as a need, and they've obviously delivered on everything else they've done. I mean, I'm very supportive of your request.
Thank you.
So that's just where I stand. Because we want all y'all to be ACS verified. We want everybody to be successful. If it takes another year, it takes another year.
I'd also like to comment that even for those of us who are in the cycle of re-verification, I have to put on my calendar to remind myself to put my request in 18 months ahead.
Right.
Because they're booking so far in advance already. So centers in their consultative thinking about trying to get a verification, it's even going to take longer. You and I have to submit soon. We're on the same month. For 26, it's crazy.
Greg, is that deadline, the 16 to 18-month backlog, is that for verification visits or for consultative visits and verification visits?
As far as I know, it's just for verification visits. I'm not sure if it's a little bit shorter for consultative visits. Really. And it's moved every time. I think in the last 6 months, it's gone from 14 months to 16 months.
Okay, well, I guess we need to vote. Does that complete your report?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, can I get a, let's see, it's coming from a committee. So I guess we don't need a motion. I guess we can just vote then. So it's open for discussion. Any other discussion? All right, I'll take nays again. Any nays? All right, so the motion carries, and I want to make sure that's documented, Liz, for the new timeline, and that let's go ahead and get an email or a official notification so there's no confusion, because this could be a disaster as far as changing dates and people not knowing about it, so that Dr. Patterson's committee, everybody is online. It's well documented, the new dates, and I'll leave that between Dr. Patterson and Liz to make sure we get the right dates between the commission and the committee.
Yeah, and I think similar to how we handle the 1s and 2s, we'll put the eligibility for funding language in the contracts with the date. So every year they'll see it on the contract that by the motion date, June 30th, 2027. So it's clear.
Okay, we'll move into the Georgia Committee for Trauma Excellence. And will that be a virtual report? Do we know?
Yes, Tracy.
Yes,
Okay,
this is Tracy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Tracy. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, El Jefe. I cannot outdo Dr. Register in reporting from just having a baby, but I am reporting 3 or 4 days post-op gallbladder. So come rain, sleet, or gallbladder surgery, I am here to give my report. So I am dedicated. The trauma registry course, we are very appreciative that the Georgia Trauma Commission paid for this AIS coding. We had 32 staffs attend from 19 centers. It also include PI coordinators, program managers. We're encouraging everybody to take it. Of those who attended, 5 from 4 different centers took the March AIS exam and passed. And then we've got 5 more people that will be taking the September exam. This goes back to a new standard. I believe it's 4.5. I can't remember exactly. That might not be the right number, but there is a new standard that requires every hospital has to have at least one AIS certified registrar on staff that is helping to abstract, to maintain that quality of abstraction. So talking about education, we've got, I think, written into our pay for performance now, or our deliverables, is that for levels 1, 2, and 3, TQIP continuing education requirements, that 50% of the monthly educational experiences need to be completed. And I think there's also like what's new for that year is also in that. So that's a positive. We've got, for PI, we're looking at defining a length of stay time frame for emergent, urgent, and non-emergent patients. This committee has kind of had to do a reset with new committee co-chairs, Ashley Bullington from a level 3 and Rayma Stevens from a level 2. So it's a good fit for them. They're working on that. I think we have a meeting next week, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going on. Can you move the screen down a little bit? Then we've got rural trauma essential nursing skills. So the education committee is working on some information to help with the essential nursing skills for the rural trauma nurse, just to make it as a toolkit, or just something that they can go to, which would really fit in with the education needs that we saw from the survey that was presented. Maybe something that's just kind of a one and done, where it's asynchronous, they could go to it, but here are some basics that you can go to. We're also working on a trauma program manager toolkit, and kind of looking at it from the different levels that a manager would work, and giving them some resources in that. Kendra's done a great job trying to lead that. We've got a lot of things going on, but we've got that. With injury prevention, as always, we've got Stop the Bleed. We've got a really big day scheduled. I believe it's tomorrow. I think Crystal said we've got over 350 people scheduled for this Stop the Bleed virtual sessions. So the Georgia Stay Safe, preventing pediatric firearms, bingo size continues, and the child abuse and human trafficking and reporting. Next page, please. So we do have one budgetary ask for the commission, is that starting with 2025 admits, we have to use an updated version of AIS coding. Right now, we're using the 2008 version, and it goes to 2015 version. That's all that TQIP and NTDB will accept next year. So we're asking that the commission would consider funding 60 participants. We've got 90 registrars listed on our GCTE contact list, but we thought if we could go for 60 participants, that would cost around $23,000. It's an online virtual course, 4 hours. That would just help get everybody. We would push for the 3s and 4s to get this resource before the 1s and 2s, but we would make it available to all participants. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Tracy, and we appreciate you doing that from virtual in your post-op recovery. And I'll open it up to the commission members for any questions. Okay, so we do need to vote.
I do have a question. Hey
Regina.
Tracy, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
This is Regina.
Yes.
Do you think, I see that you had asked for 22,800.
Uh-huh.
Do you guys feel that's going to be enough to cover the number of people we have that will need this additional training?
Well, we
Or do you
didn't
think
ask
we
for
should-
everybody. We'd be glad to ask for the more. I think it's around, and Kelly Vaughn could tell us the exact cost, but I want to say it's like $375, $380 per person. And so that we just picked a number. We would be glad to ask for more if the commission has the funds, or we could do that, because I think it's going to be really important. But this would be for the 4-hour update only. So as long as they've taken that 08 class in the last 4 or 5 years, they're good for this. So if you suggest or recommend that we up this, we'd be glad to do that.
In topic, yeah. Liz and I were just talking about how many people per center. I know obviously there's like larger centers with larger volumes have larger registrars, but on average, how many registrars would that cover?
Well, this will cover 60 participants. When we took the GCTE contact list and just went through like whatever the registrar looking job descriptions were, and we counted, there were about 90 people. So just to cover those people. And then when you think about sometimes at the smaller centers, it's one person does everything. But I think if you hit 90 to 100 people, then that would cover pretty much everybody.
And what would that total cost be?
We'd have to ask Kelly the exact cost, but I want to say the course is like $375 to $385 a person. I can't remember the exact, so times however many people we put in there.
Question for Regina on, we just voted on a budget for next year. And there was an increase in that budget based on the money we got from the legislatures. So wouldn't that additional increase cover this part, is my question?
So we do have funds and residual for things like this, initiatives that come up that we as a commission feel would further the system or support our mission and vision. This being one of them, it's to equip our trauma centers to meet their standards. So we do hold funds for things like this that come up that may not have been included in the original budget discussions, which we did not have this as a line item. So it would be something we would be using our residual funds to cover the cost of.
Regina, has there been any discussions, and this is kind of related but not, as far as having to go to a new trauma registry platform next year, and the cost increases? Has that been considered or talked about at any level? I know it came up in the GCTE meeting Monday. That we needed to stay on the ESO platform to, communicate with the ESO. But like just with even the recent patch, it's been very troublesome. I'd say 80% of that is because V5 is such an old platform. Whenever you try to fix something, it's going to break a lot of other things. But the concerns we have with the system is their communication and lack of documentation and things like that. So, but I know that that's pretty much something that's required of us in our contract, that we have to be on that platform. So, you know, I'm in a system, Dr. Dunn's in a system, and what the system, I brought this up, you know, in the system meetings when we're looking at all these vendors, you know, I'm required to be on the ESO platform. And so, anyway, all this to say that there's gonna be a big jump in what they charge us for trauma registry. What we're paying now is gonna be a drop in the bucket. So I'm just wondering if any of this kind of discussion has come up at a different level, or if that's something that the commission has thought about.
I know that the 3s and 4s currently are covered at cost for their registry, which we are very lucky to be able to do that. That's not something all states are able to do, but because data is so important and is the basis for all the decisions we make, they're all data driven. Well, we've committed to cover that expense. I know for the 2s and 1s, for those who were on the old V5 platform and are in the process of transition, or Grady could tell us they've already done the beta testing for the new Gen 6. The difference for us, we paid what, like $7,000, and for us to transition, which we're doing this year, the cost is $37,000. So there is a significant jump. For those of you that have not prepared your administration for that, I strongly encourage you do that. We've had lots of discussions along the way on that, and part of that, we do get readiness funding from the commission currently, and we were able to get increase in readiness funding for the 1s and 2s and 3s as well this year. So I would encourage you to have those conversations with administration about covering those increased registry costs with those dollars that we are already receiving. I do think, you know, we can have further conversations down the line. And I do know that Gina is working very hard to work on negotiated pricing, group pricing. Those of us that are in systems, we're included. You know, we can do that as well. There's power in numbers. That's how we got the original $7,000 cost, which is a lot less than everybody else pays. So I think if we come together as a system, we're committed to Arbormetrics, at least through the trial period. We can certainly entertain and consider looking at other registries, but we will not be entertaining and considering making any changes currently. Then we need to leverage our ability with the number of centers on board using the exact same registry. And more importantly, using the data from that registry to drive change and drive initiatives. That's a huge marketing for ESO. And so we need to leverage that and negotiate some group pricing if we're able to do so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say, Regina, I mean, that's, ours went from 27,000 to 60,000. So it's a real increase.
Yeah, it's a big hit.
Thank you. Whatever you suggest we do with the AIS 15 education, we'll be glad to follow your lead, but at a minimum, we'd like to get 60 participants funded to do that AIS update.
Tracy,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you're recovering well. This is John Bleacher. So if you had submitted for 60 participants to get the update, what were the provisions that you had in mind for the other 32?
We did not, Dr. Bleacher. We're just kind of putting that out there, thinking that would cover most of the 3s and 4s. And some of the 2s or 1s, you know, typically the 2s and 1s have better budgeting. That's not always the case, but or can find resources to cover. And so that was just our thinking in coming up with this number. It was really just a stab in the dark is what it was.
If I recall, Tracy, you just offered a course recently that was funded, correct? What?
Yes,
The
that's
08
earlier in the
update.
report, the full course, which was at
Yeah.
Gypstick. And
How many
that's,
participants did you have
that
for that one?
was, that's earlier in the report. There were 32, but that was an in-person 2-day course. And this is asynchronous. It's a 4 hour, it's virtual. They can take it anytime it's offered. And it's offered a lot this second half of the year. I think part of the reason we didn't come up with this ask earlier is that we wanted to get this in-person course, the full course taught for the state. This is just a add-on just to say this is what's changed from 08 to 15. So that's why it's only a 4 hour course. And so there are just some particular things that you have to take or to update as far as your coding stuff. But for the AIS certification, this is what we needed. Also, we were thinking that if we waited and did AIS 15 education closer to the time we're going to go to that new type of coding, it'll be fresher on your mind. If you take it too far ahead of time, you're going to forget what the differences are.
Okay, we have a motion coming forth for a request for funding for, I see, 22,800 for 60 participants. I'll entertain that unless there's an amendment or further discussion.
Just a clarification, I think you mentioned this before, but I just wanted just to clarify. If we vote for this, this is not gonna, a across the board cut for everyone, for all. This is an additional separate, this is gonna come out of a separate fund that's not gonna affect anybody else's bottom line. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, any other discussion? All right. Well, I'll just take nays on the 22,860 participants. Any nays? Okay, the motion carries. So Tracy, that carries.
All right, thank you. And I've been told by Dr. Ashley that I'm on surgery restriction now. So hopefully I won't be doing virtual reports as much as I have been.
Thank you, Tracy. We appreciate you. Okay, we'll move into the Rehabilitation Committee. Dr. Vox. Is he?
Was on and jumped off, so we don't have him.
Did we
right now,
lose?
So maybe.
We lost him. Okay.
Maybe just skip over him and come back if he's able to rejoin.
Then are we going to break or are we going to keep going through?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Dr. Walker can do that.
Why don't we do one more and then take a break? How's that? Okay. Dr. Walker, would you be kind enough we'll go ahead and skip the break and move into the Trauma Administrators Committee report, and then we'll take our 10-minute break.
Testing.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. You will note, I don't think we have a formal report in your packet because the Trauma Administrators Committee just met on Monday of this week. And so as part of the conference, that was our regularly scheduled meeting. And as Dr. Ashley said, we had Valerie Wrinkle with TCAA here that gave us some updates on various billing and other types of information that as administrators, we need to understand. Things such as, cost methodology. She mentioned a script for billers when patients call and ask about activation fees, when they, didn't have a major traumatic event. She also talked about trauma advocacy for CMS, which I think is very important and something that the commission should really think about how we could participate in moving forward, as well as Revenue Guardian, which is an Epic-related tool that helps make sure that we capture various types of charges, especially new technology. That's something that I made a note of. When hospitals purchase, new pieces of equipment, there are certain ways that we can, get credit for that new technology that we're probably not leveraging.
And then one of the biggest things she talked about was the fact that we should all be looking at a trauma reimbursement PI team. And she talked about how we can pull those teams together and who should be a part of those teams. So we had a really good meeting and some good participation. We had a different mix of people. I think there were a lot of COOs in this group. And so I'm actually glad that we had some different people attend. Hopefully they were able to take home some really valuable information. And so our next meeting is in August. So now that we have, we've been planning, for that in-person meeting for several months. So now that that's behind us, I think we'll be looking at some other ways that the administrators can support our various facilities. One of the things that was already mentioned this morning that I think I'd like to explore is a trauma administrator toolkit, similar to the one that Tracy Johns just mentioned for trauma managers. I think that as trauma administrators turn over and the handoff occurs, that there are probably some things that we could put together to help new administrators or to help new facilities. We just had, Phoebe Putney in Albany join as a verified center. So I think that's something that I would like to explore. And then last but not least, I would like to mention in our packets, we had the 2024 legislative recap, and in lots of organizations and committees that I participate in, they have their own version of these legislative recaps. And I would like to thank the commission for giving the administrators a version of Dr. Ashley's content that he presented. And I think that's important for us to have those types of things. I recently attended the Georgia Public Health Association meeting down in Jekyll, and there was a legislative, meeting where the $4 million that the commission received was mentioned, and everyone was clapping. And I was able to give a quick elevator speech on the fact that $4 million is good, but here's what we really need and here's why. So I think it's really important for administrators to have that type of information so that we're in various other settings, we can continue to advocate for what our trauma facilities need and do that in a way that will help other stakeholders understand. I think a lot of people were like, oh, we didn't realize that, that cost and all of the things that I was able to mention in just a short period of time. So thank you for that, and keep that type of information coming. That's it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Take a question.
Well,
Question, Liz?
just based on our conversations on Monday and the great hallway conversations that ensued after Valerie's talk, there was mention about getting her to do something either in person or hybrid with the revenue cycle folks from the centers. If we instead of like putting this on hold and waiting till another commission meeting or a finance committee, if we could just approve like $5,000, I can start putting the wheels in action to get Valerie contracted to get something set up and start working with your revenue cycle folks to get a next steps webinar and get that, or in person. We could just do like a 1/2 day something to kind of get that ball rolling, because the quicker we do that, the quicker your next paper or abstract will be on setting the metrics. Then we do the education, then we re-measure. So
Motion made.
What's that?
Motion made for the 5,000.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Rob. Any discussion? Okay, any nays? Okay, motion carries. And I'd just like to say, I attended the administrators committee, like I said earlier, because I wanted to just hear that finance talk. And it was great to see that come to fruition. And Dr. Walker, thanks for being willing. I know you have many hats you have to wear at our hospital, but thanks for taking this on for the state. Because that's a great testimony, what you said, when you were able, as an administrator, executive, to stand up and say, well, let me tell you the rest of the story. And that's really what we wanted from the administrators group. We need that level of expertise, that they can talk trauma just like we do around this table. So that's a success story. That's what we were looking for.
Dr. Waller, Liz mentioned a little bit about the hallway conversations. Were you able to get any feedback from the administrators. Did they know this information, or was this all brand new information, especially with trauma activation fees and the ICU fees? I mean, I'm coming from a level one where we seem to have this down pretty well, but so I just was curious as to how the other administrators felt about that and if this was new information for them.
Yeah, I don't have any formal feedback. I think this is the second time a similar presentation, but the last one was several years ago. So there were definitely some different people in the room. And even though I was in that previous meeting myself, I certainly have learned a lot since then. And hearing it again was reinforcing. And also I jotted down, some new things. And so I would assume that that would be the case, but certainly we could do a post survey, and we probably already planning on doing a post survey. I don't know if any of the other, I see Regina's hand up, any of the other attendees got feedback.
Yeah, one comment I'd like to make, Jim, I know that a lot of the centers, the level ones and things, the throwing the terms around, the 68X, the 208, all those codes, people understand them, but one thing that TCAA has done was they undertook this survey, and Valerie mentioned this in the administrator's call, looking at all of the Medicare payments by centers, and you can get your center's report card. And what that showed was, even though the terminology and the knowledge is there, trauma centers who are charging these are not maximizing their reimbursement, because they found that the numbers that are being reported was much lower than the volumes and expected amounts. So I do think there's some value. I think we've gotten to the point where people get it. Now I think we need to get to the accountability piece where we design that finance dashboard where centers report, how many trauma patients are registered as type 5, how many use the 68X, how many use the 450, because you're supposed to bill all patients the same regardless, and look at some of those numbers to see, are we doing what the max that we can be, or are there still opportunities? Which that's the piece that we don't have.
Right. And Valerie also mentioned things like a clean claims, rate. And I literally texted my CFO, like, what is our clean claims rate? And it's horrible. So, now that's not trauma specific, but, those types of details and information, I think, are just really valuable in us going back and doing that forensics, at each of our facilities to understand where are those opportunities, and a dashboard would certainly help us be able to drill down and figure out, what we're doing well and what we have room to improve. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, I think we will move into a 10-minute break. And as I send us off, I understand there's a birthday boy in the room. Dr. Patterson has turned 29 today. And happy birthday, Dr. Patterson. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start and jump back in with the Trauma System Performance Committee. Dr. Dunn.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. A lot of work going on with the Trauma Systems Committee, and we're really, a lot of it's focused on transportation as well as time to definitive care. I was really excited to see Gina's report from ArmorMetrics about some preliminary data regarding time to definitive care and where those gaps are. I can tell you that the PCR issue remains to be a challenge to try to get this information, especially the first trip from the scene to the first hospital. We're pretty good with the trauma registers. Have done a great job trying to find the second PCR and the information from the first hospital. But that first PCR is a challenge. And so we're still diligently trying to work on that. We really have to figure out where the delays are. I think everyone pretty much understands where the majority of the delay is, but I think we need the data to definitively tease that out. So some of the things that the committee is working on, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Some of the things the committee is working on is, one is to try to find out if in fact we have EMS deserts in the state of Georgia. So in order to try to figure that out, we contracted with Elaine Bulger from the American College of Surgeons, who has done similar work in Seattle to try to figure out a map of kind of where all our ambulance stations are located in the state of Georgia, to try to figure out if there's ambulance deserts, if you will. And during that process, we realized that we don't have a good definition of what an EMS station is. We thought it's, something that you just can't anticipate. You would think you know what an EMS station is, but apparently we don't, because there's different definitions. So we're having to go back and trying to refine that. And then once we get accurate definitions, we'll hopefully be able to get a heat map in the state of Georgia to find out where the deserts are for EMS, and then we can hopefully maybe potentially go to the legislatures or develop a plan on how to close that gap. Because we believe, though we don't have hard data yet, Gina's data from the Arbormetrics is the first hardcore data we've seen about, we think the majority of the issue getting Bubba from the ditch to the level 1 is really transportation. It's not necessarily medical care at the first hospital or even scene care, but it's the transportation between hospitals. But we really need to be able to prove that with hardcore data. And maybe there's a delay at the first hospital. We don't know. That's why we're working on the data. So in the meantime, Dr. Ashley's hospital and my hospital are doing a multi-center study to try to look at this very issue. And what we found out to try to piece the timeline. How much time does it take the ambulance to get from the scene? First of all, from when they're called, how long does it take to get there? How long do they spend at the scene? How long do they spend at the outside hospital? How long does the outside hospital, the first hospital, take to call for transfer? How long does it take for EMS to arrive? How long does it take from EMS to get from point A to point B? So that we can piece together the exact timeline on the time to definitive care. And what we're finding is the PCR issue. That's really the big issue. And then the second issue is hardcore information from the first hospital. Just in my hospital alone, we had about a 15% capture rate for the first PCR for the first hospital. It's just simply not there, not an image trend, not anywhere we can find. And it has to do with the accuracy of that PCR, whether that name was misspelled, whether they were a junior or a senior, or their birth date was transposed, or if they were listed as a male and then they were actually a female. There's a lot of issues that go into it. So there's a lot of opportunities, if you will, to try to streamline this data. But Dr. Ashley shop, Tracy John specifically, has been working on this for a lot longer than we have, and she's almost got 100% of her data from 2019 to 2022. So we're about 6 months behind that. So hopefully in about 6 months, we're going to be able to have hardcore data, really, really good data, to figure out, what the time to definitive care is. And this will just be 2 level 1 hospitals, but it's a start. It's more data than we have now. Though I was really, like I said, encouraged from Gina's information from Arbormetrics. Registry data from ESO to image trend to the state continues to be a challenge. My understanding is that now the state has reduced the number of data fields that we're requiring to allow that transfer from ESO to image trend to happen much sooner. We're almost there for the next year's data, so hopefully that report will be coming out soon. But I want to give a shout out to the state registrar. So thank you so much for all the work that you guys have done with this. This has been a monumental task. So I thank you for your collaboration with ESO and with the commission trying to get that data. I've learned more about trauma registries than I ever cared to know, and I'm still learning. And then the last issue was the trauma dashboard. One of the state identified in the state consultative visit was we really need to, what are the top 5 things that we're trending as a state for the trauma system. Liz has done a good job on initially trying to come up with some data fields for that. I think that's currently on hold right now because of the current ESO issues that we're having right now, but that will be reinvigorated here shortly. That's some of my report, Dr. Ashley. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Chairman, point of personal privilege.
I'm sorry, Jay?
I was just asking for a point of personal privilege.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since this is a trauma systems performance, I just wanted to say thank you and commend Savannah EMS as well as Dr. Dunn and his trauma team, because they saved the life of one of my childhood friends and his son that were involved in a random drive-by shooting when they were down there. And it hadn't been for the EMS quick response and his team's treatment, they wouldn't be here now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jay, for sharing that with us. And Dr. Dunn, anything else? Okay. Thanks for all the work y'all are doing there. I know it's been a long task, but y'all are really continuing to do good work, and I do appreciate it. We'll move now into Dr. Vassey's not here today. We'll move into the Trauma Medical Directors Committee report that Dr. Vassey had a personal emergency and couldn't be at the meeting. So Dr. Dunn and I stepped in the last second and tried to run that meeting, and did the best we could in the absence of Dr. Vassey. But basically, what they were working on was getting the word out. Probably maybe 8 years ago or so, there was a letter that went out from all the trauma medical directors that they signed to all the ERs, the non-trauma center hospitals, saying it's okay to send us your patients as soon as you know you need to. If you decided that patient has a blown pupil or some type of head injury and you've intubated or you've done all you can and started resuscitation, then there's no need to stay and do a lot of scans and work up every diagnosis. You just need to transfer ASAP. And so we basically put that in writing and said it's okay. And we sent out a poster, sort of like the burn poster everybody knows about that has in their ER the rule of nines. We sort of sent out a poster like, if you have these certain injuries or mechanisms, consider transfer to a trauma center, just to help people make the decision. So Dr. Vassey realized or thought that it was time to maybe do that again, since it's been many years, and brought that before the committee. So we discussed that, and there was a lot of enthusiasm from the trauma directors to really dust off the poster and the letter and redo that work. And so there was a subcommittee that was formed, and they're going to work on that and bring that forward. So I think that'll be great. Now that I think about it, the report we heard from Chris Scoggins this morning about needing information and education, that actually ties right into this. And if memory serves me correct, I think we kicked that to Dr. Patterson's Rule Committee, and actually I think he's going to be on the subcommittee that's working on that poster. So that looks like that's coming to fruition. That's a good circle or loop closure. Jim, I think there were some other things too. Did I leave anything out, or did that we covered?
Just that there was talk about a telehealth or to help co-manage the patient while they were waiting for transfers. And then also the whole power share issue. Really, we'll have to look into this more deeply, but I think I would obviously like, or the gold standard would be to have every hospital on power share, that they can transfer their X-ray images from their hospital to the receiving hospital, so that the receiving hospital can have those images up, real time, and then help with the referring facility with management if they have questions. But I think the real issue is we just have to say yes, and we've all been very, very good about saying yes. At least we think we are. I'd be interested to see what the level 4s and the non-designated trauma centers feel on how receptive the trauma centers are about accepting patients, because there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect, because the outside hospitals really feel like they have to try to sell their patient, and they have to do additional studies to be able to justify why they're wanting to transfer that patient, and that just delays care. So we would just say, hey, listen, this person was in a motor vehicle accident. We don't feel we can take care of them. We would like to send them to you. Roger that. We'll be happy to accept them. But that's not necessarily what always happens. So I think we've got some work to do there from a communication and a support relationship with our non-designated trauma centers.
Okay, very good. They're really starting to, Dr. Vassey's rejuvenating that group and getting it going, and so we're really excited about it. There was a lot of enthusiasm and talk at the room.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I wanted to mention, that I was surprised at how much engagement and how much discussion was had in that meeting. Everybody is supportive and wants to be involved and wants to step up to the plate and help. So I think we got to strike while the iron's hot. We got a lot of people that want to be engaged, and so we can really move some initiatives forward right now.
And then I think, Jim, the last thing that came out of that group, there was a lot of talk about transportation, and transporting patients from hospital A to hospital B. Uh, Obviously, Courtney, our chair of the EMS subcommittee, is not here, but my recommendation was, that, we should make sure the TMD, group is, they're obviously energized, but make sure they're tied into the EMS subcommittee, as we go to the legislature next year again for the pilot project about EMS and trying to do some things. I think the legislators are very engaged in this. You guys probably know more about this than I do because I was dealing with the one part of it, and I think you all were dealing with the EMS pilot projects, but that didn't quite get through, but I think it'll come up again. And so I think our EMS subcommittee needs to lead the way on how we handle these transports between hospitals. I think the legislators hear that that's a problem and an issue. I think a couple of them have actually had problems being transported themselves, which has highlighted the issue. And so the TMDs are obviously very supportive. So I think as we go to the Capitol next year, I want to make sure those two subcommittees are hand in hand as good allies to solve this problem. So just keep that in mind. Okay, that's all we have from the TMD subcommittee. So I'll turn it over to, we'll get the Georgia Trauma Foundation report from Dr. Bleacher.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley. The first item on our report is board expansion. I'd like to forward to the full commission for approval a candidate to join the board of the foundation. She is a trauma survivor. Many of you in the room may know her. Her name is Ashley Nowell. She is in Region 9, and she was hit. She had run into the back of a truck carrying telephone pole-sized logs and crushed the side of her face. She credits the great work at the receiving hospital and also at Memorial, where Dr. Dunn works, for saving her life. She is a fierce advocate and outspoken advocate for trauma care, and she would be a great addition for increasing public awareness and also advocacy. And I'm excited, as she is excited, to join the board pending your approval.
For those that may not remember, there's a famous slide of her and Dr. Coles with her hands raised at the Capitol one day when she was advocating for trauma, when Dr. Coles was on the Trauma Commission. So that was just a great picture.
Yeah, it is.
I still remember that. But anyway, so we'll bring that, I guess it's open. We don't need coming from the committee, we don't need or the foundation, a motion. Or a second, but any discussion on the new board expansion?
Dr. Fleischer, what is the goal for the number of people on the board? Is there a limit, or?
So the ideal range would be somewhere between 9 and 13.
Okay.
How many would this bring us up to now? I've lost count. They're putting you on the spot.
No, I know. We have
count
people
everybody on your
joining,
fingers.
We have people rolling off. I think we're at 7 now.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So we
good.
still got a ways we still got a couple more people.
Yeah, we still need a few more people.
And is there a limit, a term limit on the board?
Yes, each term is 2 years. There's a maximum of 3 terms, so a maximum of 6 years of
Okay.
service.
So you're in a continual process of recruitment then?
Continual process of recruitment, yes.
Okay, great. Any discussion? I'll take the nays. Any nays? Okay, motion carries. So I think she would be great, John.
I think so too.
She's just a great spokesman for
Yes.
trauma and has been for a long time now.
Yes, yeah. No, we're excited to have her. The second item is something that I probably don't even really need to announce because all of you should have been there, and judging by the crowd that evening, most of you were there. We had our annual fundraising event at the Porsche Experience Center on Saturday, this past Saturday. And the final numbers for what we brought in as far as fundraising have yet to be tallied. So hopefully I can share that with you the next meeting. But just based on the side of the crowd and the level of support that was in the room and all that, I'm hopeful that we will bring in a substantial amount of money for that.
That was an outstanding event. The jump from the first one to this one was astronomical. It was a very well put together event. Some of the items on the agenda were fantastic. It was just an overall good event. I think in the future, you may want to consider trying to get a different participant group there versus hospital people and more business people, but I think there were some business people there. So, but I thought it was a great event. And shout out to Cheryl for putting that out. So,
yes, I'll echo that. Shout out to Cheryl. It was largely her doing to get that off the ground and pull it off in the way that it did. Thank you for your comments, Dr. Dunn. And I think really the stars of the show were the trauma survivors who gave a very compelling story of why this is also important.
I would like to echo those remarks. We do this every day, but I was super impressed with just the professionalism of the program. And I think that goes directly back to Cheryl. So I want to make sure that she's acknowledged publicly here because that was, I thought, phenomenal. I was inspired. I do this every day, but to hear those stories and see those survivors, it was energizing for me. And I think we need that as healthcare providers. And if I'm a layperson, that doesn't do that every day, the way that was put together is the story was told so professionally that it really put out front what we do. So Cheryl, thank you. It was really outstanding. So it's going to be hard to top for the next one, whatever you do.
Top it. We will top it.
But it was really good.
Thank you for those comments. And yes, it was a great reminder of why we do what we do. Yes.
You might say therapy.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Finally, with regard to the continuing education, the Rural Continuing Education Initiative project, this past year, the first year of the multi-year grant, we conducted 18 courses, which taught over 200 students, and we're looking forward to even increasing that for next year. And that concludes my report.
Okay, any further questions for Dr. Bleacher?
Dr. Bleacher, how long does that grant, the educational grant, run for? Is it open-ended until the $1 million is gone, or does it have to be? It's a
4-year grant.
So if we don't spend the money by 4 years, then we lose it. Is that how that works?
Right, but we will.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move. That conclude your report, John? Thank you. Okay, we'll move into the Georgia Quality Improvement Program report. Is that going to be Gina? Okay. It may not be on, Gina. I'm not sure.
This one is on. We'll do it this way. All right. Good morning. To start a report, we had a great meeting yesterday. It was a long day, but it was a great day. So with our GQuip meeting, but our work groups, we are still working on VTE and time to care to get them off the ground. But I will say that we had a lot of interest regenerated yesterday in both of those work groups. So I think we will be adding to the list of volunteers, and I think we will be definitely getting those off the ground after the meeting yesterday. The Arbormetrics platform went live in December, and we have all of 2021, 2022, and 2023 data loaded, and it was exciting to be able to present some of that data yesterday. The participation in the site has been a little slow, but I think the ability to show some of the data yesterday and what we can get out of it has definitely generated some activity. I have gotten a flurry of emails and notes. Hey, can you reactivate my account? Send me the email. So I think that will help. And with our upcoming meeting in November, we wagered a little competition. So we hope that will help as well from that standpoint. The PSO for GQuip, the Patient Safety Organization, we did submit the application for that, and we will have our first meeting with the AHRQ next week. So we will have 2 meetings set up with them, and we will know what the next steps for that. So our spring meeting was yesterday, like I said, and our fall meeting will be on November 20th prior to the commission meeting. And it will be in Cordele, and it will be a little smaller, more intimate. We're looking to restructure the meetings a little bit, maybe only have one very large meeting, and the second meeting will be a little smaller. And I think we saw with our polling yesterday that most kind of agree with that restructure. So we will be meeting at the Southern Technical College prior to the commission meeting from that standpoint. And I think Dr. Todd was going to talk a little bit about our winter meeting for next year.
Yeah, I think it's kind of loud and clear. Probably go to one large meeting, kind of like this one, and then a smaller meeting, which will be more data-driven, case review, and really more PI focused for the trauma medical directors and trauma program managers, and decrease the number of folks who are expected to attend. And then going into the February or the 2025 winter or spring meeting, we have a date determined. We're still looking at locations, and I think we'll go back to a winter, spring / summer meeting cycle is kind of what we're looking at. That's kind of the overall overwhelming preference of the attendees. So more to come. Happy
Very
to
good.
entertain any questions?
Any questions for Rob or Gina? I thought the meeting was great yesterday, and I thought there's just a lot of good information, I love the case studies, and I loved how inclusive it was with 1 through 4s all participating and telling their story. And then now that we've got Arbormetrics and we've got data, that's obviously only going to get better as we learned it, or as you all learned to get us started on that. So thank you very much. I thought it was really good. Okay, and then our last report is from the Office of EMS and Trauma, Stacy Smith.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank y'all for the last 3 days. This has been a great event. I've been happy to be here. I've been glad to be able to put faces to names. As many of y'all know, I started at the end of last year, so I'm still new. So I'm happy to be able to meet people in person and not always virtual. For the Office of EMS and Trauma, we've had a good year. We've had some consultative visits. We've been doing consult visits with me, Marie, and April to help facilities get up to speed. If they have questions about the ACS visit or a DPH visit, we help them make sure they have the resources to be successful. So we're glad that we were able to do those consults. And then if you need consult or you want a consult, reach out to me and we can do a virtual or in person as you prepare for your next visit or designation visit. Some successes, we've had 2 new level 1 trauma centers that were ACS designated. One of them stepped up from a level 2 to a level 1, so we're very excited for that facility. And then we have a new level 2 trauma center in Region 8, which we're very proud to get South Georgia on board. Y'all know we have a lot of, like we always say, it's the desert down there. So we're happy to get some more facilities on board. And then I have some meetings with some possible level 3 and level 4s to be new facilities down there in South Georgia. We are also continuing to work with the Trauma Commission to develop our trauma dashboard. In 2025, the data dictionary schema preparation file will be coming up, so we'll be on the lookout for that. We were excited for the Office of EMS and Trauma. We published our EMS annual report, and it is available on our website. And we do have some published, you might see some copies out and about, but we also have it available on the website. Marie and Gina continue to do data validation visits to help get people prepared for GQuIP and TQuIP downloads. Let's see. Some other things we've got going on. Our Kelly Joyner is working with Liz to continue to develop trauma centers and EMS locations across the state. Richard Rhodes and Heather Reddick and Kelly Joyner are working with an EMS subcommittee for maybe some EMS courses to be funded with the commission. And then we're excited to talk about the GDAC development on our EMS workforce dashboard. We have an EMS dashboard that includes workforce distribution, demographics, license information, service provider information, and education. So that way all EMS facilities or entities can log on and look at the education that's available. The website is listed in the report, but they can access that, and it's updated quarterly to provide some of those educational programs. That's all right.
Quick question. Are you aware of any level 4s or level 3s that are de-designating or are dropping out of the system?
We do have one, we're waiting on their letter, but a level 4 has dropped out. And we're just waiting on their letter to be able to announce it.
Do you know the reason for that? Is it a financial reason, or is it just a lack of interest reason, or?
Theirs is financial and resource. They're losing a lot of, I think they're not going to be having inpatients in their facility anymore. So it's a funding and resources.
Any other questions for Stacy? All right, thank you, Stacy.
I do have,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry, Stacy or
Oh, I think
can you,
Regina,
I
do you
know
have
you
a
can't
question?
say who, but do you know, are you able to tell us what region that will impact? Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, I don't have any new business. I think we put out a call and there was nothing that came in at the last minute, so we'll move on past that. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
I think we need to still review the rehab report.
Oh,
Liz, Dr. Box can't make it in for patient care, but he had a motion in his report.
Oh, thanks.
thank you, Gabby. Let's go back to that then.
If we can just bring forward, because I can explain to you what the actual motion was. In your packet, it's page 47. And if you recall from the ACS system console, one of the recommendations around rehab was to develop benchmarks and measure performance. And thankfully, through the GQuIP data set, we actually have some data that we can do that with. So Shepherd has a researcher, Rada Anderson, and we have worked under the careful guidance of the GQuIP attorney and the peer review attorney to ensure that for system performance, we're putting it under the umbrella of GQuIP, that it's okay to share the data for that purpose. And they have approved it and have written very tight language in a contract. So they would like to ask for $8,980 for the buy down of Rada's time to be able to analyze the data to see first of all, get an overall view of what is happening in terms of overall rehab utilization, look and see what we can identify as areas of opportunity. I would anticipate there might be something ongoing, but this is just what would at least get us that initial analysis.
So are you saying this is a limited term contract?
For the initial, and I think once she does the initial, we'll get a better idea of what that effort might look like ongoing, because I mean, you know, according to the way the ACS looks at system performance, we should be measuring and looking at rehab. So once they can kind of manipulate and play with the data set and find out what they can and can't see in it, then they'll be able to identify, you know, the so-called benchmarks, things that we should be looking at, namely appropriate utilization, like what patients are falling through the cracks, who's getting it. Mostly people are not getting it that probably need it. And then stratifying that by, is it spinal cord injury? Is it head injury? Is it just polytrauma? That kind of stuff.
So it's like a roadmap. It's to shine a light in the room and tell us what we need, and then we'll have to decide. They'd have to come back and tell us what we need. Is that the? Sort of an
Liz, can you
overview.
just go over the funding, the number of the dollar amount?
Yeah, so we based it on about 84 hours of her time at a rate of $95 an hour. And then we added we just put we always typically do this, but we wanted her to come present to you. So we put a small, like $1,000 placeholder for travel if she's going to come to our meetings. We wanted her to present to you a preliminary report to get feedback on, is this meeting the right intent of what the ACS said in their system consult report? Get that feedback, go back, look at the data set again, based on your recommendations, make any changes, and then come back with the final report.
And how much would that be?
$8,980 total.
Okay, any other questions for Liz? Standing in for Dr. Box. Okay, I'll take nays. Any nays? All right, motion carries, Liz. Thanks, Gabby, for bringing that up so we didn't miss that. It was important.
Keeping us on tap.
Any other, did we miss anything else? Gabby, you, all hearts at ease? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion second. All those in favor? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you for coming.